I keep talking about the narcissistic parent and mostly the narcissistic mother, but what about the other parent that was married to that narcissistic parent, that co-parented, that brought you into this world? What about your dad? Or in the case that the narcissistic, loud, and horrible parent was your father, what about your mother? Where was she in this entire thing and during your childhood? You would probably say she was also there, he was also there, but she or he was a victim too, right? Isn't that what you think? Because of one of them being such a tyrant, the other one had to be their victim. But actually, she or he was not a victim too, because the real victim of this story was yourself, a defenseless, vulnerable young child that was caught in the middle of a trauma bond between an abuser and their enabler. That's right, not their victim, their enabler. And perhaps your other parent, that narcissistic parent that we keep talking about, at least visibly narcissistic, was so loudly horrible that it made it so that the other parent, the one that enabled the abuse, they didn't protect you, they didn't show up for you, didn't rise to the occasion really of being a parent, remained a little victim. The other parent was so horrible that this one seemed like the good one. I mean, the bar was pretty low, and you had to take what was there, right? As this parent, at least, with all their shortcomings, at least felt safe. But were they really safe? If your abusive parent could have spared you from the abuse, but didn't, this other parent could have saved you and protected you from it, but they didn't. Because they were too busy saving face for the world to see what a good, happy family they had. That was more important to them. They didn't want to fail at their dream to be and look, particularly, happily ever after. They were also keeping themselves safe, right? And they were too busy chasing validation and approval from your narcissistic parent. They were rehashing and reliving their own inadequacy, their own trauma bond. Everything just was happening there. They were too busy with that. They were too busy not provoking the monster. They were too busy needing love and acceptance from their abuser to do something and step out of that situation and show up as a parent. They show up as another child. And that's what really happened. All really, because they were too busy becoming an enabler. At the expense, and the price to pay was yours. And listen, I can see and I can understand how we are much more empathetic with this parent. I myself can really relate to this. Because oddly enough, we can relate thinking and feeling as if we were both children trying to stay safe from the other tyrannical parent, right? The bonding that happened with such a parent who was actually an enabler, but also showed up as a victim, made it so that we think we are equals. We're going through the same thing. We're sharing struggles. And we're here talking about our other parent and how they're doing, because they were acting as if their partner was also their own parent. But the truth of the matter is that this is inaccurate. They were playing pretend because they were the adult. This entire time, they were the adult and you were the child. Which is why this parent, in my opinion, committed the biggest betrayal. Because it was the first time that we had someone act like they're on our side, not show up for us and save us and help us, but instead be a bystander to the abuse that we went through, justify it, train us how to be less provocative and spare us from, being in trouble, getting in trouble. Instead of facing the actual abuser, they were trying to regulate and change us to make us more digestible to the other parent and therefore somehow safe. So their only way to keep us safe would be to teach us how not to speak up, not to provoke, not to go against, to be obedient, to be good, to be this, to be that. Like that was their only way to keep us safe, right? And to kind of like reduce the whole thing to, you know your father, you know your mother, come on, do better. They came with expectations of doing better to us, to the child, but never once took those expectations to the parent. Why? Because they were afraid of that parent. Why? More specifically, because they were a child themselves. They were so emotionally immature that they didn't realize that they were reenacting their own stuff and acting as if they are a child when they were literally with another adult that they chose to be with, right? They weren't aware of that. They weren't aware of their choices. They weren't aware of their power. They didn't try to show up. And obviously this has a lot of nuances for abusive family systems and different types of abuse. But what we're discussing here is when you have a blatantly horrible, narcissistic, toxic parent, when you look on the other side, there's always a more codependent and enabling parent. These two go hand in hand. This is why they can coexist. One is both are worshiping one person, the narcissistic parent, right? So the enabler is more codependent and more focused there and selfless, which is the perfect match for somebody so self-centered as the narcissistic parent, that when they become a parent with all the authority that comes with parenthood, they become a tyrant, really horrible to their kid, even if they're a woman or a man, it doesn't matter. And what this enabler or codependent parent will do is will try to find a way to manage the environment around this parent so that this parent doesn't get angry, doesn't feel offended, doesn't feel displeased. So basically in this dynamic, all you ever saw growing up is a father or a mother that was constantly catering to the needs, to the insecurities, to the insanity of another unstable parent. All the while, supposedly the important needs here were of the child. And I know it gets tiring when we keep talking. My needs as a child, my needs as a child. Listen, we're not talking about it in the sense that we can turn back time. But we have to go through this validating process to understand that when we are a child, we, and supposedly the children, are the most important part of the experience of everybody, because the children are the most vulnerable. The children are the most needy. The children need the parents. And so what happens in these dynamics, these two are doing their thing. Your needs are being shoved down and you have to forget about them, not show them, make them less. Somehow earn your place in this crazy dynamic by presenting yourself as having no needs. And so then you grow up to become a woman who has no needs, just like the parent that you were watching cater to the narcissistic parent, just like that mother or father that you were. Because what did your childhood teach you? Between all of this enabling, be quiet, don't make them angry, don't be loud, don't do anything that this parent doesn't like. If anything sets off the rage of this parent, this other parent is always going to take their place, at least in front of that dynamic. Maybe then they'll come to you and say, oh, your mother is always doing that. I know, but when you're there, they'll stay silent, or they will tell you to drop it. They will never defend you because they cannot defend you. Their part and their agreement, their unconscious agreement, is to be the enabler. But isn't the enabler also an abuser? Either a bystander? And all of this helplessness that describes this enabler, is it really helplessness or denial to grow up, denial to show up, denial to step up, denial to lose the stamp of approval of that narcissistic partner, which then brings them forth with their own stuff that they need to deal with. But they're not going to deal with any of that. They're just going to manage to raise you somehow, and you're going to think always that this parent was the good one, because they were kinder and safer to you. But again, how much safer is an enabler from an abuser? Because the abuser is loud and you see them. But the enabler is going to be on your side until they have to choose between the two. So what happens? You feel betrayed. You're never chosen. There's no trust. You don't trust that others will show up for you. You don't feel worthy of taking up space. You feel like there's no space in that environment. You're an intruder. You're bothering them. You're making the other person unhappy, and this other person is trying to fix all that. You are born in the middle of a trauma bond unfolding with two emotionally mature parents playing pretend of their own unhealed childhood and their emotional immaturity. And these two adults have full responsibility for you. But what ends up happening is nobody's raising you. You end up unmothered and unfathered, non-parented. You raise yourself. You raise yourself. And what you do is you will deny yourself the right to have needs, to take up space, to want things, to need things. Like, it's almost like you're going to grow up into this world, and instead of expecting this world to meet you, you're going to be like, can I breathe the same air as you guys? I don't want to be a bother. And what do? You people please. You fawn. You're scared of authority. You know how to adapt. When you see authority, you know exactly what role to play. When you go into these dynamics at work, with your friends, in your own relationships, you know exactly what to do and what you're going to do, unless you become just like the narcissistic parent, which is a probability. Let's be honest here. We weren't exposed to so much toxicity, and we're like, oh, I didn't even know about that. Like, let's be real about that. But most likely what happens is that we are divided between the two, right? The psyche of the child looking at these two is going to say, I see myself like the weak parent, right? But I resent this weak parent for being weak. And so in a way, what I need to become in order to not be like this parent that I resent, because I don't want to be like them, they're so weak, I'm going to have to turn like the other parent, the one that I hate, because I don't want to be weak. I want to be strong. I want to defeat this other parent, because I, of all people here, need to kind of also protect my mother or father from my horrible narcissistic mother or father. But how will I win this game? How will I become a fit, a match for that parent, right? So this is complex, much complex, very complex for our inner world. But the thing is that we can never, these two parents exist within us. These two examples and blueprints of how to be human exist within us. This is how we interact with ourselves. And most of us carry that within. The abuser and the enabler, this chronic victim of our own toxicity. But that is, I guess, for a different whole video. The point that I was trying to make here before I mentioned this is that the parent that we watched be a victim is most likely the blueprint that we would follow if that was a woman. But also, if we have felt identical to them, right, and we're like, oh, we're also victims, again, by being like that, we will know exactly how to be like them. So we will show up in relationships with toxic people, and no matter how powerful, strong, independent we are, we're immediately shifting, totally changing gears and going towards, I know how to do this. Everybody stay quiet. I am going to handle the moods of this person so that they can stay happy. You became the expert manipulator of someone's emotional world so that they are nice to you. It really matters that we understand these things, because it matters that we stop reliving them. It matters that we remember that we are now an adult. And when we're going through all of these things, identifying these things, and no longer lying to ourselves about who really protected us, which was nobody, then what will make sense is who we became in order to survive that environment. And the fact that we don't trust or rely on other people, yet at the same time, all we want is to be saved. Why do we want to be saved? Why wouldn't we want to be saved? it's not only that we have this whole thing happening in our childhood, then we grow up with all these stories and ideas of love is going to save us and a man is going to save us and all that. And it really clicks. It really clicks. And we wait for it. We wait for it to happen. And when it does, we're like, what is this dynamic that I found myself in? This is the same. I'm just thinking about so many people that I worked with that would tell me that the dynamics that they recreated in their own family was so identical to the ones that they experienced at home. They would have this realization during the sessions, right? But it felt like a shock, although it was clear. They recreated the dynamic. They were married with someone that was abusive, volatile, angry, all of those things. And they would just try to navigate everything around them, just like what they witnessed. So there's no innocence here. Nobody's innocent in this equation except you, the child. So if you're going to be doing this work, you need to be really honest with yourself about what really happened. And I'm not saying this because you have to go to either of these parents to have any type of conversation. That's not necessary. But if you have the opportunity, these are conversations that I had with one of my own parents. And they have been really powerful conversations to have, but I didn't really expect anything, but I confronted them. And I was very honest about how much what they did hurt me, because I was tired to, rehash the whole thing with the one parent and then sort of like, do you think you play no part in this? And I know this may sound like it's a really, I don't know, even as I say it, there's a part of me that says, did we expect too much, right? But that's the reality of things, is that when we're able to have these honest conversations, if we have the ability to have it, not because we want something in return, but so that some things are to be said, we're opening up a very vulnerable door that the other parent may be able to cross over or not, right? In my case, at least, reaching out to have these conversations was never to let's figure it out and you finally get it right? It's more like it was a need that I followed. It was my own need. But that's not what resolved it for me. What really resolved it for me is to realize that I wasn't protected and I was indeed waiting for someone to save me. And that was freeing to really admit to myself and understand, because sometimes we think we have allies, but our allies are just keeping us stuck in that same space. And it's almost like we're trying to float at sea, right? And there's only like a little lifeboat. And then we're trying to grasp on the lifeboat and they're like picking up our fingers. We're dropping and they're like, let me get you up. And they're again, let me get you up. But really, if we look around, the ocean is just a little pool, which is our little tiny life as children. And we have to be like, wait a minute, and get up and literally just stand up and be like, this is your thing. Figure it out and walk away out of that pool and into the world. Our life, our one and only precious life that we've already missed out too much on it, being entangled in drama, right? So we have to show up in our lives, unlike this other parent who, despite their best but not enough effort, remain a child and didn't grow into the adult that they should have been in order to really show up for us, right? So the aftermath of not growing up is lethal, right? Because who you choose, how you're with them, what you're able to do for them, and how little you can protect others from them is going to be affected by how much of an adult you are, which in a lot of cases for this other parent, that those of you who had one narcissistic parent had, unless you would hit the jackpot and you had both equally excruciatingly narcissistic parents, it was really, the effects were very bad, right? It was equally damaging because they don't work alone. Every narcissistic parent is standing next to an enabling parent in one way or the next. So what do we do? What do we do if this was our trauma? Basically, this is a betrayal trauma, right? And a self-trust trauma. In my opinion, obviously, boundaries, protect your time, blah, 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 all these things, they're really just, you know how I am with these things. But what I truly think is the most corrective experience of this is that you need someone to save you. You need someone to, and no, it's not going to be God. No. And it's not going to be a man or a woman, whatever you're into. It's not going to be some magical friend or some other thing. Although sometimes maybe some wonderful people will just walk into our lives and indeed work as a saving force. But that's really not something we can count on, right? Especially those of us with betrayal trauma. So what we need is a corrective experience of someone to save us, but this time we have to do it ourselves. We have to become the Prince Charming. We have to become the knight in the shiny armor that comes back and rescues us. So for every memory we intervene in and walk in as the adult self and talk to the inner child, we're essentially rescuing that inner child that is stuck in a past that they had no way of escaping then. That was the reality then, right? You had no way of escaping. Now you're stuck. Many parts of you are stuck in the past. And when you do inner child work, what happens is you go back and you rescue those parts. That's how I see the healing journey. And when I designed Heal, the sessions that I designed, what I had in mind is more like a journey where you're like, okay, you know how, have you watched Kung Fu Panda, the series, or in general, every type of movie like that? It's almost like you have to go, when they were trying to get the gauntlet and all these things to kind of, or even in Iron Man and all of that with Marvel, that they were trying to get the Infinity Stones, right? I see so much of that in, I actually love this type of movies. But what's happening is this, that I am going on the search and I'm picking up pieces. It could be Infinity Stones. It could be the gauntlet or whatever it is that they were doing in Kung Fu Panda. I don't remember the other things that they were trying to pick up. But there's always like picking up a lot of things. And then when you put them together, you create something powerful. Now, in those cases, it was a lethal weapon. But what I am seeing is that through our journey, we keep picking up things. And then when we put them all together, we create something really powerful. And that's how I see the healing journey. And that's why when I designed Heal, I was like, we're going to have to revisit a few things that are important. And I'm going to help you pick it up. You know, your self-worth, the masks that you wore, relationships with parents, relationship with siblings, attachment. Like it's like you picking up little infinity stones. And at the end of it, what you have is, when you put them all on this gauntlet that you're wearing, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm worthy. That's the conclusion of at least phase one, is coming back to our worth. But this is the experience of rescuing these parts. So every time you go into your past, to remember the past and to do inner child work, which I don't recommend we do indefinitely. Eventually you have to be like, okay, no more of these inner children. We are pretty much whole. Let's go out and live our lives. But if we do the important moments for the important aspects, right? Such as our sense of worth, the way we attach, the moments that we had really traumatic moments, relationships with important people in our lives, the way we were viewed, the mirroring, the masks that we were wearing, the coping mechanisms, you know, all of these things that are important. Then we revisit moments that shaped and define those things for us. We pick up our little infinity stone, we put it in the collection, and then when it's all put together, it clicks to the fact that we are whole and worthy, which is not something that we can learn cognitively. It's something that we can understand through this journey, right? Throughout history, we talk about journey. Ithaca, one of the most famous Greek poems, talks about journey. A life's journey is really this thing that we do, challenge after challenge, that then gives us knowledge after knowledge or awareness after awareness, and then adds up, and we are finding ourselves more wise, and more solid and more grounded. Now, that doesn't mean we live in a fairy tale. Because if anything, after healing, we're no longer capable to live in a fairy tale, even if we want to. But we are living in our lives. We're sovereign, we're in the driver's seat, and we've finally become an adult. And an adult that isn't willing or able or brave enough to look at the past with their eyes open, they're never going to grow up. If we stay in denial about those who hurt us in the past, we will stay in denial about how we're hurting ourselves, and we will very much stay in denial about how others are hurting us. And then on top of that, we will stay in complete denial about how we're hurting others. This is the chain. This is how generational trauma keeps on happening, right? So, there's no innocent parent, right? There's no innocent parent, but also but right now, all there is you. And what you're going to do is you're going to validate your story, go out and rescue your inner parts, take the infinity stones, the learnings, the awareness, whatever it is that you're going to get, so that you can restore a sense of self-trust, like I did it. I showed up for me. I defended myself. I saved myself, right? I kept my word. I said this thing. I confronted. I did all these things. It doesn't matter that it is happening in your mind and you're not doing it actually to the parent. It matters that it is experienced within as if it's happening in the moment. And that is such a corrective experience. Picking up all these infinity stones. And then at the end of this journey, you become a Kung Fu master, like Po. Right? I recommend you watch it. Not just the movies. What I really loved was there's a series. I think it's like 3 seasons of it. I really loved it because I like these kind of stories that have this storyline. And so I totally recommend you watch it because I think, for me, these symbolic type of more simple type of movies, when they were talking about realms and collecting infinity stones and all these things, the meaning for me is always very clearly the same. The experiences that we go through are challenging. We pick up learnings, put them all together. It adds up to something. We find our superpower and we become a type of master at something. And the mastering that we want here is not like you become somebody perfect, but you become fully yourself. Even in that movie with the Kung Fu Panda, he doesn't become, he just becomes more of himself, and that's the win here. That's how we sort of heal, is we become more of ourselves by accepting more of ourselves and owning who we are. But first, we have to go and save ourselves and the parts of ourselves stuck in the past, and therefore become the parent that we needed that didn't have, right? A parent that actually showed up for us. Instead of waiting for these people to now do it. Like, it's just not going to happen. Even if they try right now, it won't even correct the past. If anything, is going to make you more angry. Be like, you're doing it now? Really? So they can never win. Even if they do change right now, they cannot correct what they wronged. Because now what they wronged is now an internal process within that has to do with your own way of betraying yourself and not trusting yourself and not showing up for yourself, right? So you do this, you do your healing work, and then you're going to go out and you're going to live your life, and you're going to choose and look for people who will show up for you, right? They're not going to save you from anything. You don't need saving, but you do need to be in relationship to people that love and respect you. Something, again, you severely missed out on. It's never too late. I'll see you soon.